Welcome to the Indigenous Entrepreneurs Podcast. Today I have one of our awesome tribal liaisons, Mytegia Lee, with us to talk about some updates that she has, not just regarding her liaison position, but also with the organization that she's the executive director of, Southwest Native Assets Coalition. There's been some really exciting things going on with them. So we just wanted to get on here to talk about it. So, Mytegia, if you want to give us, I know most people probably already know you, but just an introduction for those listening who have never met you or heard from you before, and then
Okay.
we'll get into the updates and successes that you've had recently.
All right, that works. Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Mytegia Lee, Southwest Native Assets Coalition. I am the executive director. Here at our coalition, we have a handful of things that we do for our community, tribal communities in general, Native Americans. We offer homebuyers education. I myself am a HUD certified homebuyers education counselor, as well as Native American Indian housing counseling certification. So with the dual certifications, what that means is that we focus specifically on housing when it comes to tribal communities and also inner city. We did the dual certification, myself and the housing counselors that are here with Southwest Native Assets Coalition, so that we would be able to access more grant funding that is available out there to make home ownership and affordable housing more available to tribal communities. And what that means is self-educating and also being proactive in ensuring that we're offering housing stability products to clients that do come to us. Aside from the housing stability that we do offer, housing counseling, home buyers education for pre and post purchase counseling. We also do financial literacy and credit counseling. In the mix of all of that, that's gauged us to start to do more cultural competency and awareness for not only businesses, but other communities, to bring more awareness on what tribal communities deal with and how we differentiate from urban communities or inner city. There are a lot of differences when it comes to finances and credit, simply because we have a lot of these tribal communities that are underbanked and they're underserved and they're rural. So they don't have accessibility like you would see in a city. You know, you drive down the street, you have, for instance, you go out to Albuquerque, you see BMO Harris, you see Nusenda, you see First Financial, you could hit about 10 banks with probably 2 blocks. And you come to these smaller towns such as Gallup, Window Rock, Farmington even, they don't have that many banks. There's not as many banks that are out there. So within a 2-hour radius, being about 150 to 200 miles, there are no banks for tribal community members to access, and that makes it a banking desert. So with that, in addition to the financial literacy and credit counseling we also offer small dollar loans for debt consolidation and personal and business. So we cap out at 10,000 and where interest is capped out at 5%. So we're doing pretty good with that. So that's a little bit of what we do. And then with UNM's Tribal Entrepreneurial Enhancement Program, what I do as a liaison, just for those of you that haven't met me or know of my work a lot with tribal community members that are exploring entrepreneurship and business owners. A lot of the times they've been operating businesses for well over 10, 15, 20 years even. And we see how different business owning on res versus off res is because of accessibility issues. Once again, we have a lot of our elderly that still have language barriers. I am bilingual in my own language. So I am Dene. I'm from the Navajo community, and I am from the Manuelito Kinhujon area. And so that's where I come from. So seeing a lot of barriers that we have in our tribal communities, as a tribal liaison, I mediate what a lot of those situations are. Like, let's say if an individual doesn't know what an EIN number is, they don't know how to establish what getting an EIN. I'll sit down with them. We'll get on the irs.gov website, we'll fill out their information to do a sole proprietorship, LLC, whatever it is that they need, break it down to a science for them of what's needed, and also explain their banking situation, how to separate their personal banking from their business banking for tax purposes, and what resources are out there, what kind of grant funding is out there, what are organizations such as UNM and New Mexico Community Capital, Native Women Lead, just a handful of other organizations that are out there that support tribal-led businesses, including federal funding such as the SBA, SBDC, SBDCI, Change Labs. There's a wealth of resources that are out there for individuals, but a lot of the times they just don't know where to go. They don't know where to start. And again, accessibility. We have, just like how you and I are on the internet, on a day-to-day basis, we have access to Wi-Fi, we have access to all of our devices, be it a laptop or a tablet or a cell phone. In these rural communities, we're still struggling with access to the internet. So folks just don't even have an email set up. They don't know what Instagram is. They don't know how to do online marketing. There's so many things that we're still trying to gravitate toward as far as change.
Yeah, so you've just been doing so much, not just with SNAC and also with us. And you were doing a lot already. But recently, I think it was December or at the beginning of this year, you received the Wells Fargo grant that has allowed you and SNAC to do so much more of what you were already doing. So I'm wondering if you can talk about what you've been up to, what the grant was, and what you've been able to do with that as of like the past month or so.
Okay, so we were awarded the Invest Native grant last year. So operating year would be beginning October to September, October of 2023 to September of 2024. And what that grant award is allowing us to do in our tribal communities is bring financial education. We don't have a lot of financial education in our rural communities. So I'm able to get out there, and it's not just Navajo. One thing that I do want to elaborate on is it's not just Navajo, it's tribal. So with 23 tribes in New Mexico and we have 17 in Arizona, we really want to make sure that we're impacting change by going out into these rural communities and not just waiting for our clients to come to us, but actually going out there and having that same grassroots approach that we have been using with our entrepreneurial ecosystem there at UNM, and just making sure that folks are able to sit down, attend, and understand exactly what it is that we're bringing to them as far as a message about finances. And one of the main things that I like to elaborate on is how a lot of individuals fail to recognize that finances really go as a core component to just about everything. When it comes to housing, when it comes to health, when it comes to psychological health, when it comes to economic development, when it comes to community development even. So we have so many outlets that we could go back to when it comes to what does finance have to do with my day-to-day living. It really has a lot to do with that. Even working with a few organizations when it comes to workforce development even. A lot of them basically didn't understand why it was important to have financial literacy or credit counseling. And how I explain that is, when we're going into a job, right? Nowadays, you can't even apply for a job without them pulling your credit. And when they're pulling your credit, they're looking to see if there's anything derogatory that would kind of give them a sign that you're not responsible or that you're not a good character for the position you're being hired for, especially when you're working at a bank or you're working anywhere that has to deal with money. And a lot of the times, even working as a cashier at McDonald's, you're dealing with money. And it's coming down to that, to where we can't even apply for utilities. We can't apply for really anything without credit. So, really just getting back to basics and helping folks understand what is my budget? How do I stay within my budget? And why do I need credit? And if I do have bad money habits, how can I fix that so I could fix my budget and also address my credit at the same time? I know that it becomes a really overwhelming situation in a lot of these tribal communities, because when you come to smaller tribal communities, you see a lot of predatory practices. You see that, these lenders that are out there that offer predatory lending when it comes to small dollar lending and whatnot. Look for communities that are rural and that have low income, or they have issues as far as finances where they can't go into a bank and get traditional lending, because traditional lending would require a debt to income ratio. It will require you to have an excess amount of money. And a lot of the times when you come into these smaller communities, they just don't have that. Or again, there's a language barrier and they're just not able to get what it is that they need or express what it is that they need. And when you're having to drive hours on end in order to even get any kind of access to capital, that's also difficult. So there's so many more components that I can elaborate on, and that would take us hours. But just the skinny of what the grant is allowing us to do is to go out into these tribal communities and bring that message and allow folks to attend our financial literacy classes at no cost to them. It's all nonprofit, and this is also work that it's being funded by Wells Fargo. So we're able to sit down with them in a classroom setting, do the workshop, give them that knowledge, understanding, and empower them with more so that they have housing stability or they're able to elevate to home ownership. And if those two components are not anything that they're interested in, and they're interested in business or starting a business or how to properly operate, then we do that. But at the end of all of it with the workshop, we also offer all of our participants the opportunity to sit down with one of our housing counselors and do a one-on-one session to address any kind of needs that they have. Let's say that they're having issues with their rent and they don't know where to go to get rental assistance. We sit down with them and we go over that. Maybe they're having issues with their utilities and they don't know where to go because they just have never had to be in a situation where they don't know about local, tribal, or federal funding that is out there that's able to assist them with their unique situation. So we like to do the group setting just to allow everybody to receive that same message, because it is extensive material that we go over. But we also want to offer them the one-on-one so that we can devise an action-based solution plan for them and make sure that we're helping them navigate through their own personal situations, and they feel like they have an answer that is going to be viable for them, and that is going to be an outlet for them to say that they're able to move forward and have stability in a whole as an individual, with their house, with their job, just all around. So that's what we've been doing.
So, what kind of impact do you see being able to provide so much more courses with this grant? Like, now that you have this grant, you've been able to do like what, every other week? I think you do 2 a month. What impact do you see that having on these communities that you're serving?
Okay. So last year with grant funding that we had, we were not able to get out at the rate that we wanted to. When we came into doing some housing stability work, the grant funding that we had was very little, and it was only able to cover part-time employment, and it was only able to cover a portion of travel. And anybody that lives in these rural communities knows that, once again, we're about 2 hours away from anything. And when you're living in these rural communities, if you can't get out there and meet your clients where they're at, there's not really any success to be had, because we're talking about individuals that are living in multi-generational homes that are sharing one vehicle. Let's say that there's 3 or 4 or 5 families that are living in one home, and they have one vehicle, and it's going to have to be a pick and choose of who needs that vehicle to get to work, who needs to use that vehicle at what time, and if they even have any resources. If they're on fixed income and lower income, a lot of the times they don't have the ability to meet you at a local facility that's hosting a training, let alone are they willing to take what personal resources they have to achieve getting that message. So what we like to do is we like to go out to these rural communities, set up a time, work with these local leaders or individuals that know about a specific need that's in that community. And we set up mobile, or we'll set up these individual meetings with clients. In a group setting, we're able to go over everything and have anywhere from 10 to about 30, sometimes even 40 participants. And what we have them do after the event when we do the workshop is fill out an assessment form. That assessment form is going to tell me who am I calling, what cell phone or email, what's your preference of contact, and what resources are you needing. At the bottom portion of that intake and assessment sheet, we do ask them what resources they need, and we give them several different components of what we offer, just as we mentioned earlier. Is it utility? Is it housing? Are you in a mortgage? Are you addressing credit, finances, lending, business? Several different components that we offer them. Then they check mark as many as they need, and we schedule a one-on-one meeting with them, whether it be in person or virtual if they have access to uh, the internet or whatnot. If they don't, a lot of the times we literally will sit down with them, help them develop their emails, and help them apply for whatever resources they need without them having the stress of trying to navigate through those application processes. So within the past 3 months, we have been able to reach 3 times the number of individuals we were able to serve in a year. So to be able to do that in 3 months tells you a lot about the impact that we've been having. I'm about to get emotional about it because we have so many individuals that are in the community that go day to day without having an advocate or a voice or somebody that's able to just sit there and properly go over paperwork with them. We see a lot of situations where folks are still dealing with adverse effects of COVID, where they have, health issues that have, made it impossible to seek employment, or they're still dealing with health issues and they're just not able to really get the help that they need. Again, there's that language barrier, accessibility barrier. So we've seen a lot of unique situations, not one story being the same, but several different situations where we've had individuals that end up going through being single parents because they lost their partner through COVID, or we have family members that they lost during COVID, and the pandemic really brought a lot of hardship to these tribal communities because we have so many folks that don't have running water or they don't have electric. So they're telling everybody to socially distance, and you're talking about multi-generational homes again that only have 2 or 3 bedrooms, and they're sharing one restroom, and they're having to navigate through that. We've seen a lot of what that did in our tribal communities. And what we're doing is we're coming with a robust approach of how we can help them to ensure that that doesn't happen again. Part of that is the education, and another portion of it is advocating for more housing in rural communities and partnering with our leaders that are around us, and not just tribal leaders, but leaders that are inner city, to let them know that this housing crisis really showed us that these tribal communities were not prepared, and what can we do on a state level to make sure that we have that, and then how can we get the message on a national level to make sure that we have a more awareness on it. But I think that it's a give and take situation, because when we do go to state or federal, they do want to know that there is that due diligence and that we are doing the work to make sure that we're preparing people to understand what housing is like, and that core component is their finances. Are they going to qualify for housing? If the residential housing is made available for them, will they be able to afford it? And what resources will be used to do development? What resources will be used to implement everything that we want to see in these communities? So again, that falls back on finances.
So one thing, like through the tribal liaison work that you're doing, that we've identified as like a huge need, that impacts people's ability to start and grow a successful business is financial literacy. So once someone has that basic financial literacy, that you are providing through SNAC, how does that impact like their future and their ability to start a business or to start generating generational wealth?
Okay, so when we're talking about generational wealth, a lot of the times, a lot of our participants don't know what that is. What they don't have an understanding of what asset and wealth building is, or what generational wealth is. The reason being is when you come to these tribal communities, what we understand as any type of asset or wealth building, I always replace those 2 words with culture and heritage, because when you do come to these tribal communities, those two words are always going to take over the two words that are used in, I guess, Western society of asset and wealth building, because you're coming to communities where we don't put a dollar amount on the asset and wealth building portion of things. So we use culture and heritage, right? Our culture tells us that we are cultivators and that we're able to adapt to anything just about. We're ranchers, we're farmers, we're weavers, we're beaters, we have so many different things that we bring to the table. And when it comes to that, our heritage always also empowers us in understanding that we're resilient. But when we break it down to a science for participants, we help them understand what asset and wealth building is and how they have to adapt to that, because as we all know, time is changing. Times are changing and we're just adapting to the change. That's all we're doing. And though we're coming from tribal communities, a lot of the times these banks still have that same demand, right? What we were talking about, they still have their traditional lending practices. So in order to prepare individuals that are trying to become successful business owners, we want to give them that core understanding of why it's important to separate your personal and your business finances. What does accounting mean? And how do I do simple accounting? And this is to ensure that they're not carrying more debt than they need to. And then when it comes to filing their taxes, that they have things in order to where they're not going to fail. We don't want that failure to happen. We want them to start to generate a revenue. We want them to start to be able to put money in a savings account, start to do an IRA, start to do some more research on individual development accounts. We want them to start doing more research on ways to start marketing online instead of doing more things in person. We want them to do these things and understand their finances, so that when it comes down to it, let's say that COVID, and I'm going to take it back to Native American artisans. In our tribal community, Navajo specifically, we had a shelter in place, and that lasted longer than what Arizona and New Mexico had in place. And that was because the number of COVID cases that we had. And because of that, that shelter in place didn't allow swap meets to be open. It didn't allow businesses to operate like they normally would. Folks weren't able to get out to swap meets to sell their goods. They weren't able to get out there and sell burritos like they're used to selling, or, generating income the way that they were used to because of that restriction. So they didn't have a reserve. They didn't have savings that were set aside in order to give them that cushion during that time of not having any type of income. And then at the same rate, because they didn't have an EIN, because they didn't have a business account set up, when they went to start to explore PPP lending or anything that the SBA had, or any type of grants or anything that was out there, they didn't qualify. And that was one of the biggest things that I saw immediately, was just that there were so many individuals that were impacted by it because their self-employment is a means of income for them, and they were not prepared for any of the situations or unfoldings that they were presented. And that made it very difficult. And even now, with ARPA funding that has been flowing through the Navajo Nation specifically, there's still a lot of people that will not qualify for that because they didn't have any of that paperwork. They didn't have a business plan. They didn't have a checking account. They didn't have their receipts. They didn't have the information that they needed to show any of these departments that are doing any type of funding, like for instance would be Department of Economic Development's small business and artisan funding, proof of what they purchased or proof of what their expenses are. They didn't have that all saved. Again, you're talking about a community that still is trying to grasp the knowledge and technology and all of this other stuff that is out there. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're empowering these individuals to where they understand the basics of why it's important to do this, whether it's personal or business. And at the same time, we want them to understand their finances, because if they're going to go in for any type of borrowing at some point, because every business does, when you're starting to expand your business, you need more fleet, you need more supplies, you need more inventory, you need more employees. Maybe you need a new vehicle for your business. Anything that you're doing involving business is going to require a level of credit. And that credit is going to be a reflecting factor of whether or not a bank is going to lend to you. Even working in banking, we would not give any individual a line of credit without them meeting certain metrics, of their reporting or their availability to report. And when you're on the business side versus the personal side, it's two different stories. And we're still seeing a lot of growth that needs to happen in the local and surrounding communities, but just giving them the basic knowledge of how to do that and working with them one-on-one as much as they need to make sure that we're achieving that and achieving it at the best rate that we can, not only through our personal efforts, but through the mentoring that UNM is offering, through the accounting information, your online videos over there with the UNM Rainforest Innovations Program, and the group efforts of it, just everybody across the board with all these awesome nonprofit organizations that are offering any of their launch your business workshops, or it just Sister Sky with her accounting and her empowerment workshops, just everybody across the board. It's a group effort and a collaborative effort to make sure that we're bringing as a wealth of knowledge to all of these business owners and entrepreneurs.
I think one of my favorite things is that collaboration, that we've been able to do as organizations, even with our tribal entrepreneurship enhancement program through UNM, we were able to help SNAC do workshops at UNM Gallup, which I thought was an awesome result from our program, and then the collaboration,
Yes.
what other organizations have you worked with? And also, I know you are doing workshops in Gallup, but have you been able to do workshops in other communities as well?
Yes. We have mainly been focusing on the Gallup area to try to get folks in as well as we can. I have made some outreach efforts to some leaders in different departments with the Navajo Nation to see if we could do collaborative efforts to work more with them. We did do 2 events with Navajo, one being with the Division of Economic Development, and we called it the Gift of Education. That was an event that we did back in December. And we've been working with other tribal communities in bringing the financial literacy and awareness, as well as banks, bringing the cultural competency information and curriculum that I've created so that they could better understand practices and communities, tribal communities specifically, on what they can do and how they should approach things. I think a lot of the times when we're working with larger organizations, there's always that strategic planning, right? And they're not used to dealing with tribal communities versus coming in and trying to do that. So we always want to make sure that the trust is established and that tribal community members know that we're there to help them and not to hurt them. And that the message in it is that we want to see that growth. We want to see that growth factor with all of them. But to answer your question, short and sweet, we have been doing more in the Gallup area because I feel like it's the best place to start. UNM has the availability and the accessibility for us to use their facilities in order to carry out our classroom sizes that we want, because we're always shooting for anything above 15. We could even accommodate up to 75 if we wanted. And a lot of the times that's what the main issue is not having that space or that ecosystem available in order for us to carry out that cause. And we have been working with Tamaya Housing. We have worked some with Jemez, and we plan on working with more of that tribes across New Mexico and Arizona as we continue to grow. But just with the clients that we do have in Gallup now, that has given us a full plate. So with more funding, we'll be able to hire more housing counselors and replicate Mytegia by 10 times in order to get out there and do more of the work that we are doing. So I'm excited about that because there's always an opportunity for growth.
I don't know if we could ever truly replicate Mytegia. But
Trying at the best of my ability of just making sure everybody that we're working with and that we have out there can do the work, and we've had that success, so it's been really great to see that.
That's awesome. So just kind of on that note, what are some of your goals? Because I know you really want to continue to grow SNAC. So, what are some of your goals for the organization?
Some of my goals for the organization, oh my gosh, okay, so I start to overwhelm myself even with this. Bringing the organization out of a dormant phase was probably one of the most intimidating things for me when I had first started and took the position. I thought I was just going to come on as a housing counselor. And it was when I had first started to explore nonprofit altogether. And I've always been in corporate. I've always done a lot of the corporate work. And um, so for me, this was very different. And in the process, I fell in love with what I was doing. I understood my place in the world was nonprofit. And I've always been a giver. Like I tell everybody, I'm a giver, I'm a lover, and I'm a doer. So with that, that should tell you that I'm an empath. And for me, my family, growing up, I saw a lot of hardship internally because of the language barrier, because of the accessibility barriers, but we were also rich in our heritage. We were rich in our culture. We were rich in family. And with that, that gave me the mindset and the tool set and the skills that I needed on a culture and heritage level to go out into the community and to make things work for me, to navigate how I wanted things to look, and just intermixing them with what I've learned throughout my careers and who I am as an individual, just being very integrity driven and knowing that I wanted to impact change so that everybody could um, experience what accomplishment, success, and stability was for them, no matter where they were at. And I think that as an organization, our mission is to ensure and that folks that are in tribal communities have awareness, empowerment, and accessibility. We want to make more possible. With that, my plan and my goal with the organization is to do more lending. We've been able to achieve a lot of lending that is relationship based. Let's say, for instance, I'm going to give you an example. A client of mine was at a 99% debt to income ratio. Nobody would ever look at anybody with a 99% debt to income ratio. That meant that only 1% of his monthly income, which was fixed income, considered low income, was what he had available for himself. And this was just because of predatory lending and their practices. He was overwhelmed. He was psychologically, emotionally, and physically just done. He was ready to just be done with just about everything that he was faced. And in the mix of all of that, we still gave him that beacon of hope. And when we were helping him, he was still faced with the difficulty of a predatory lender that didn't want to work with us, that didn't want to give us a payout statement. And that was overwhelming for him because it took us a little over 2 weeks to finally achieve that by having to get the Attorney General's office involved and get, some people that are with the state involved in ensuring that we were able to get that for the client. So it's kind of a tug of war with what we want to achieve, what we're able to achieve, and how we achieve it. And because of that, that's made me more persistent in increasing my loan portfolio, increasing the accessibility to clients. And I'm striving right now to ensure that we're able to bring a product that is going to be accessible to more tribal community members throughout Arizona, New Mexico, hopefully expanding even as far as Colorado and Utah, and offer an even lower interest rate than we're offering right now. And make sure that that equitable access to capital, for one, is there for not only businesses and personal, but just all of our tribal members. We just don't have enough of it. So that's one thing that I do plan, and as well as becoming a CDFI. So we want to do that so that we have more leverage in everything that we're doing. And that'll give us the ability to expand more, expand our reach more in finances and housing, and just bring more housing stability throughout the tribal communities as a whole, whether we partner with other states, other organizations. We just want to make sure that individuals across the board.
I can't hear you.
Okay, sorry.
There you go.
Did I?
It's okay. You cut off when you were talking about being a CDFI.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know what
It's
was going on
okay.
with my phone. I'm on my phone, so the internet on my laptop technology decided to give up on me. So I'm like, I'm over here struggling with that. But giving myself about a year to achieve becoming a native CDFI so that we're able to expand our reach more and access federal funding at a level that will ensure that I'm able to help more folks across the board with an already awesome product that we already have in place, and making sure that we're able to expand that reach, not only just in the surrounding communities that I have, but all throughout Arizona and New Mexico. And see more success stories, not just for personal, but for business and just across the board, and make sure that everybody has stability as a whole when it comes to finances and understanding what finances mean. Because it finances, again, let's go back to that first comment that I made at the beginning of the podcast, was it does affect economic development. It affects the workforce development. It affects our health. It affects our stability, just everything in a whole. So I don't think that folks can really comprehend what finance means. So that's my definition.
So I'm not gonna keep you too much longer because I know you're a super busy person. But one thing or one comment that I did want to make is I do think Southwest Native Assets Coalition is a very unique organization in the sense that you guys really do focus on the native population, and you do come at it from a cultural lens with your financial literacy training, which I think is super important. And you really do establish that relationship with each of your clients. And I can't really speak for like all of the financial literacy programs out there, but I think you guys really do make sure that you provide them with those skills and that knowledge. That way they can continue to carry on and maintain their finances like past the program. So I just want to
Mhm.
commend you for that. And I
Thank
do
you.
think it's impressive, and I think it's a huge need that I don't see a lot of other organizations taking the same approach that
Mhm.
you guys do.
Yeah. Well, with the amount of experience I have, 17 plus years of working in finance and business, I just took what I knew. I took that lived experience. I took what I seen in my own community, and I created the curriculum. So there's not anything that I have in my curriculum that I think that anyone can really say, okay, we've seen this elsewhere, and it's just bringing all of that knowledge that I've have gained through the years of what I have read, what I have learned, and what I have seen, what I've experienced, and bringing it together and sharing that message with individuals that can relate, and also allowing others to share their experiences with me. That's the biggest success that we have in all of our classes that we offer, is allowing everybody to understand that they're a part of the conversation and they're a part of that movement. They're a part of that process by sharing with me, okay, what is your message about money? What do you want to see? And how are you going to take what we learned today and implement this into your life based off of what your values are? I don't know what those values are a lot of the time. So we tell them, is it cultural based? Is it, personal? Is it business? We don't know what those are. But a lot of the times I know that the biggest factor in all of it is just being able to relate to these individuals that we're bringing this message to, and to let them know that there is a way. There is a way to do it. And based off of what we have made available and based off of what we've seen partner organizations make available, we want to make sure that we're navigating through a lot of what they cannot navigate on their own, and making sure that they have that guidance, they have that support, and knowing that they're not alone in that process. Because at one point it was frustrating for me myself, of thinking, where can I access capital that would be easier on a personal level for myself? Just thinking to myself, I was very adamant about my credit score. I was very adamant about my living situation and how I wanted things. And even then, when I felt like I was doing my very best for traditional lending and for what banks offered and what they did have, it still was not enough. And so for me, as an individual, that was overwhelming, because you feel as if you're in a place of success, right? You feel like you're in a place of contentment. And for you as an individual, you feel as if that means that that's go code for, okay, I'm ready to purchase a home. I'm ready to expand. I'm ready to start a business. I'm ready to do all of these things. But then again, there was that barrier that was put in place for me again, and that was a systemic barrier that was created to keep me in a box. So I started to think to myself, how do I get out of that box? And there are a lot of individuals that were out there and organizations that help guide me through where to start, where that begins, what that looks like, how to access that. And so all I'm doing is sharing that information with the audience that's out there. And it takes individuals like you, specifically, Cecilia, you're amazing. Just like you tell us, you're a trailblazer. And you're at the forefront of making sure that we're able to share this message, but at the same rate, you're doing the research on behalf of UNM and getting those resources so that the Rainforest Innovations Program and the Tribal Entrepreneurial Enhancement Program are successful. Because without those resources that we do allow to share with, that we are allowed to share with individuals that we work with, they otherwise would not have that. And it's also working with individuals like EDD and everybody at SBA across the board to make these impacts. And I think that it boils back down to the involvement that UNM decides to have when they're allowing us to be a part of that ecosystem of strategic planning, whether it's for community, the state, UNM, or anybody else that is in that space and in that room. So I think it's a collective effort, and it's something that we're always working towards, and it's a daily effort. So thank you for that. Thank you for giving me the time to share a little bit about what SNAC does, what our grant funding has allowed us to do, and what we plan to do. If anybody has any questions, they can always go to our website, which is southwestnativeassets.com, or they could reach out to me at mlee swnativeassets.com, or they could shoot you a message and they can ask for my contact information. But we are always readily willing to assist and sit down with any individual that's wanting more information or wanting to work with Southwest Native Assets Coalition. So thank you.
Thanks, Mytegia. And I think you just hit the nail on the head with just the collaboration that we've been able to have together, but then also with the other organizations that we've been working with. It really does take a village, and like creating that ecosystem, that accessible ecosystem that we have started to create, and I think we're still developing, but you really are a key player. You and all the liaisons, I think we have such an amazing team. So thank you for your work on that, but also congratulations on, the work that you've been able to do with SNAC this past year. And I think you're just getting started. So I can't wait to see how the organization continues to grow, and you've already had such an impact. And I think you'll just continue doing that. So congratulations, and thank you for all the work that you're doing to serve New Mexico, and mostly like Gallup and Native American population. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.